Over my dead body. A waitress protected Hell's Angels blind girl before 400 bikers arrived. The night it all happened, rain lashed against the windows of Daisy's diner, and thunder rolled across the dark highway like an angry god. Inside, the neon lights flickered weakly, washing the cracked tiles and old coffee pots in a dull yellow glow. It was almost midnight, the kind of lonely hour when truckers stop in for their last cup of coffee and drifters come in out of the rain just to feel human again. Behind the counter stood Sarah Miller, a 34-year-old waitress who'd seen her share of hard nights. Her apron was stained from long shifts, and her eyes carried the quiet exhaustion of someone who'd been fighting life for far too long. But despite it all, she smiled at every customer, because deep down she still believed the world could be kind. If you believe kindness and second chances can still change the world, then please, before we go further, like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel Kindness Tales. Every story we tell here is a reminder that even in darkness, light still exists. Sometimes, it just wears an apron and holds a coffee pot. That night, the storm outside wasn't the only thing brewing. Sarah noticed her last customer, a small girl of maybe 12, sitting alone in a corner booth. She wore a faded pink jacket and dark sunglasses despite the night. Her hands traced the rim of her glass nervously, and beside her was a small white cane. Sarah felt something twist in her chest. The girl was blind. She hadn't ordered much, just a grilled cheese sandwich and a chocolate milkshake, and she hadn't spoken a word. But her silence said everything. Sarah knew that kind of silence. It was the kind that comes when someone's scared but too proud to admit it. When Sarah gently asked if she was okay, the girl only whispered, "I'm waiting for someone." Her voice trembled, and Sarah realized that whoever she was waiting for, it wasn't anyone she trusted. She noticed bruises on the girl's wrist, old ones, half-healed, and a small cut on her cheek. Something inside Sarah snapped. Moments later, a group of loud men stumbled in, rough-looking bikers with leather jackets, tattoos, and patches that read Hell's Angels. The diner fell silent. Even the rain outside seemed to hold its breath. Everyone knew better than to mess with that kind of crowd. Sarah had seen them before, not these exact ones, but men like them. Tough, dangerous, the kind who didn't take no for an answer. But when one of them looked straight at the blind girl and grinned, Sarah's stomach turned cold. One of the men, tall, greasy beard, snake tattoo curling up his neck, pointed and said, "That's her." The girl flinched at the sound of his voice. "Your daddy's been looking for you, sweetheart," he sneered, stepping forward. In that instant, Sarah didn't think, she acted. She stepped in front of the girl, heart pounding so hard she could barely breathe, and said the words that would change everything that night. "Over my dead body." The diner went dead quiet. The biker blinked in disbelief. Sarah wasn't big, she wasn't strong, and she sure wasn't armed. But there was something in her eyes that made even monsters hesitate, the raw, fearless fire of a woman who's been broken but refuses to stay down. "Lady, you don't want to die for this brat," the man growled, his tone low and dangerous. But Sarah didn't move. She felt the girl's trembling hand clutch her apron, and that was enough. For years Sarah had lived small, afraid to fight back, afraid to believe she could matter. But now, protecting this child, she felt something rise inside her, something powerful, something pure. The man's hand reached toward her shoulder, but before he could touch her, Sarah grabbed a pot of scalding coffee from the counter and hurled it. It hit his arm, and he howled in pain. Chairs scraped. The others started moving toward her, anger boiling in their faces. Sarah's hands shook, but she stood her ground. "Get behind me," she whispered to the girl. "You're safe here." The men advanced, and Sarah knew she didn't stand a chance, not against 5 of them. But she wasn't going to back down. Not this time. Not ever again. Then, a low, deep rumble filled the air, faint at first, then growing louder. The sound of motorcycles. Dozens of them. Hundreds, maybe. Headlights pierced the darkness outside the diner, casting long shadows across the rain-slicked parking lot. Sarah turned toward the windows, her breath catching in disbelief. The Hell's Angels, all of them, were coming. For a heartbeat, she thought it was over. That they'd come to take the girl by force, that she and this child wouldn't make it out alive. But what happened next silenced everyone. The first biker through the door wasn't there to hurt anyone. He was there for her. He was a giant of a man, with a silver beard, broad shoulders, and eyes that carried decades of road dust and sorrow. The room seemed to shrink when he stepped inside. The 5 bikers who'd threatened Sarah instantly froze. "Is that the girl?" the big man said quietly, nodding toward the child behind Sarah. "The one who's been running?" The greasy one nodded quickly, stammering, "Why yeah, boss. We were just..." The leader's voice dropped an octave. "You were just what? Scaring a blind kid in the middle of the night?" His tone was calm, but deadly. "You think that's what we stand for?" The man lowered his head, muttering something Sarah couldn't hear. The leader's gaze softened as he looked past her and saw the little girl. He knelt, his rough voice breaking. "Sweetheart," he said gently, "your daddy's gone. He can't hurt you anymore." The girl's lip trembled. You knew my dad?" The man nodded. "Yeah. He was one of us. A good man once. But when he died, his brother, that fool right there, started using our name for things that shame every patch we wear." He looked up at Sarah then, his eyes glistening. "And you, ma'am, you had the guts to stand between hell and that child." He straightened up, turned to his men, and barked, "Nobody touches her. Nobody ever threatens a kid, or a woman who protects one. You got that?" Outside, the roar of more bikes filled the air, hundreds of them. Bikers from every nearby chapter had arrived. They weren't there to bring harm. They were there to make things right. For the next hour, the diner became a place of quiet redemption. The rain slowed, and the thunder faded away. The leader stayed by the girl's side while Sarah brewed fresh coffee for everyone. There was no more fear, only a strange, healing calm. Sarah learned that the blind girl's name was Emma. Her mother had died when she was a baby, and her father, once a proud rider, had gone down a dark path before his death. The uncle had been using Emma for money, a pawn in things too cruel for her age. When she finally escaped, she'd walked for miles in the rain until she found Sarah's diner. When dawn broke, the world looked different. The bikes gleamed in the wet light of morning, and for the first time in years, Sarah felt like she belonged somewhere again. The leader of the Angels approached her before leaving. He handed her a patch, not an official one, but something deeply personal, a small, hand-stitched emblem of wings wrapped around a heart. He said, "This isn't for a biker. It's for an angel who doesn't need a motorcycle to fly." Sarah couldn't speak. She just nodded, tears filling her eyes. As the engines roared to life, Emma hugged her tightly and whispered, "You're my angel too." That night became legend among the bikers, the waitress who stood up to the devil himself, who shouted, "Over my dead body," and meant every word. And though Sarah never looked for fame or thanks, from that day forward, Daisy's diner was never empty again. Riders from across the country would stop by just to shake her hand, to say they'd heard about what she did, and to leave a few dollars extra on the counter, for the angel. Life didn't suddenly become easy, it rarely does, but it became full. Emma was placed in good hands, and Sarah found herself smiling again in a way she hadn't in years. She'd learned that bravery doesn't come from muscles or guns. It comes from standing up when you're scared and protecting someone who can't protect themselves. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness, courage, and love can still exist in the darkest places, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Tales. Speech balloon before you go, tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Sarah's place that night?